So these are some leftovers from, primarily from when Mom and Johnny took me along with them to go to Red Fideli's Brook House as part of a dinner to celebrate Mom's birthday. We drove there, leaving the house around 5:45 p.m. I got up sometime between 2:30 in the afternoon and 3:30 in the afternoon. I'm going to say it was around 3 p.m. Now, this is a fresh loaf of the regular bread. That our waitress had prepared for us to take home. And when I expressed desires to put what remained of a second serving of the free regular bread, that came along with our patronage. This is some sparkling grape juice from Wegmans. Neither Mom, me, nor Johnny had any, either during our, I believe, around 6 to 7:30 p.m. dinner at Red Fideli's Brook House. For which Johnny opted for a table. And I went along with it, even though I was kind of hoping for a booth, since that would have been more comfortable. We drove to Red Fideli's Brook House, marking the first time I had been there in years. The only thing I really remembered was a sort of coat rack they had pretty close to the entrance. And I think I remember that because I saw that while waiting for Mom to pick me up the last time I went there. Along with the free bread and butter, we were served water, complimentary water, which was nice to have, along with, for some reason I felt an interest in trying different brews of beer at Red Fideli's Brookhouse tonight, rather than doing what I usually do and trying to ask for a cocktail. Perhaps it had something to do with how Mom and Johnny got this wine bottle to have with their dinner. I, in particular, opted for the seafood fra Diavolo. I'm not sure if I pronounced it correctly this time, but I was able to pronounce it correctly when I ordered it, because Johnny pronounced it correctly when I first expressed my desire to order that. Red Fideli's Brookhouse primarily specializes in American Italian cuisine. It has a lot of pasta dishes, chicken-oriented dishes, veal-oriented dishes, and the American dishes are the ones with seafood and the ones that involve steaks. Yeah, but I've always liked to get seafood fra Diavolo at various places because both pasta and seafood is delicious. If I recall, Johnny got a seafood platter that came with haddock, some clams, and some shrimp, according to the best of my memory. Both my and his entree came with either a side salad or soup, and we both opted for soup. And each of us got a different soup. Johnny got the cream of chicken soup, while I got the waitress recommended chicken something soup. I'm not entirely sure of the exact name right now, but it was chicken something. And my soup had a significantly darker broth than Johnny's. And my soup was pretty delicious. I initially held off on fully eating it because initially I wanted to wait for the main course to come so I could take a picture of the soup and the main course at the same time, but then I felt bad for holding off on eating the soup, and so I just ate the side soup right before the seafood fra Diavolo came. As I learned when that entree came out, fra Diavolo is Italian for of the devil. Thus the name of the entree, seafood fra diavolo, basically translates to seafood of the devil, hence why the sauce in that dish is always spiced to an extent. And before the entrees came out, and Johnny got some appetizers, one of which was a sort of fried calamari, and the other was garlic bread with cheese melted on them, with marinara sauce for dipping. For that appetizer, I did this trick of dipping once at each end of the food so I could dip twice without actually double dipping. And it worked pretty well. Mom and Johnny were pretty nice to share the appetizers with me. For my first beer, I got the dark Rohrbach German-style beer of a stout ale. And then for the second beer, which I pretty much got with the seafood fra diavolo, for that one, our waitress actually got a recommendation from a nice server because, in her own words, they're more familiar with beer than she is. I said as such that I liked the darker beers. They seem to have good flavor for me. Johnny warned me that the first beer I got was very strong. Both flavor-wise and alcohol-wise. Although flavor-wise, it wasn't too strong for me. And nor was the second beer I got, which was still a dark, strong beer. But it was a different one. It was some kind of ale. Maybe it was Irish something, if I recall correctly. Either way, they were both enjoyable. The second beer was a little more bitter than the first one, but both were still enjoyable. They were quite nice to have, as I enjoyed the various foods that were shared during the Red Fidelis Brookhouse dinner, during which we made some conversation. I showed Johnny some of the newer styrofoam drawings. And at one point, Red Fideli himself came to our table, stating that he was happy that we were having a good time at his restaurant. During which I mentioned that I had come to Red Fideli's Brookhouse before, of which he had some confusion. Apparently, some time ago, there was an older location for the Red Fideli's Brookhouse, but obviously I didn't go to that location, and as soon as that confusion arose, it pretty much left him, because he was able to deduce that I'm younger than 26 in spite of my extra weight and my considerable facial hair, both of which makes me look older than I actually am. He was a pretty nice older man, and after he left our table, he went to some more tables and booths to chat with the patrons of the restaurant. For this, we were able to bring the bottle home once we had finished it off. Apparently, this state has some kind of open container law, something like that, which is why the bottle had to be emptied before it would be safe to bring it out of the restaurant, since Johnny had paid for the whole bottle. Because I knew we had sweet things at home, since we knew before we left for Red Fideli's Brookhouse that Johnny had bought for us some package of mini cream puffs, and a small cheesecake with a fruit topping. Which was most likely cherry flavored. But this is actually what was left over of my seafood fra Diavolo was put in. And when we asked for a box for it, along with some of Mom's entree, which, if I recall, came with some escargot. When she said that, I got a bit confused, asking, isn't that snails? To which she corrected me, that's escargot. Apparently, escargot is some kind of dark greens, and it came with the entree Mom got. At the end of our meal, once everything was put away and I had finished my 2 glasses of beer, I initially got a small sort of wine glass in order to taste this wine, and then considerably later on I had some poured into my iced water glass, which looked a lot like this, except without these ridges. This in order to empty off the bottle. Our waitress at the end had brought up the dessert question, to which I said I would like dessert, but then Johnny mentioned that we have sweet things at home, of which we had those around 10:30 p.m., around that time. Initially, when the seafood fra Diavolo came out, it was so hot temperature-wise I could barely eat it. At that point, I only really managed by eating those big pieces of shrimp. They were good. Had plenty of flavor and some firmness and tenderness to it. Around 10:30 p.m., me and Johnny sang the happy birthday song to Mom after she had lit 2 candles that I think had stars on the top. Of the small cheesecake, and then she blew out the candles by waving her hand near them, kind of like this. I opted to have a vanilla piece of this cake and a chocolate piece of this cake. It has a considerable amount of black die. So when we had at least one piece of it, it made both Mom's and my lips black. Due to the food coloring. And then I had some of the cheesecake and some cream puffs, both of which were nice and sweet. And at the end of that, we had Johnny take some of this cake and some of the cream puffs and the cheesecake he bought for us home with him. So as to avoid food waste. And Mom also gave him 4 of the Texas Hots we got the other day. And he thanks Mom for those Texas Hots. Yeah, I hope he really enjoys them. Yeah, they're pretty tasty. Because Red Fideli's Brookhouse is a pretty nice place, and more nice than pretty much the fanciest a place can be before it's no longer considered a casual place. It was deemed important that I wear these sort of black dress socks that were a bit longer than the kind of socks I'm comfortable with. Typically, I typically wear socks that go up to my ankle. The black dress socks I put on pretty much went up to some inches above my ankle. I'd say about a third of the way up the distance between my ankle and my calf. So nowhere near up to my calf. In fact, closer to my ankle than my calf, but still quite a bit up my ankle. If I recall, last night I stayed up until about 6 in the morning or so. I wore a pretty dark pants and a black shirt that I think could be described, I want to say as a polo, but I'm not 100% sure what a polo is. I'm just going to say it was a black t-shirt that had a button at that part that's in the middle of your chest. Yeah, I ended up making a bit of a mess of that t-shirt because the sauce on the seafood fra Diavolo was pretty close to the liquid side of the spectrum of sauce thickness. And when I twirled the noodles with my fork, I would then kind of slurp up the noodles. And so at times the sauce would hit my shirt and my face. Yeah, but it didn't happen that often. I'd say it only moderately messed up the top part of the t-shirt and didn't even really hit my face at all. Only a light droplet here or there. About 5 pieces of the second round of the regular bread we were given complimentarily. It was taken back when this fresh loaf was given because it had been left out, and so there were concerns about that leftover bread being hard, even though I still was willing to bring it home. In fact, there was a point in which after the garlic bread was exhausted, I used the marinara as a dipping sauce for the regular bread. I was still willing to bring that leftover second round of regular bread home, but it was still taken back because our waitress wanted us to have fresh bread. It was her way of doing us one better than having us bring that leftover bread home, which I really appreciated. It was a pretty nice and generous thing to do. Though I do wish that leftover bread wasn't taken back. I would have been fine with eating that too.